Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to From the Left with Stephen Leon. I am running for Virginia's House of Representatives in the 8th District. Thank you to the GCD Network for hosting this show. Tonight's show is about an agenda overview. We're also going to do some questions from the audience, some directed at me and some general. That should be neat. Let's get right to it here. If you've attended some of my other podcasts, you have seen what is going on here. For me, I've got a little blinded share screen thing. Anyway, so first thing off the break, American Anti-Corruption Act. That has been assembled from a grassroots third party known as Represent Us. The idea is to mitigate money out of politics, and that prevents lobbying. Essentially what they're doing now is they're spending 70% of their time focused on campaigning, raising money from, again, PAC groups. There's also trades, stock trades that are going on. We don't know what they're doing behind the scenes with any policy that goes on. You could look at, let's say, Nancy Pelosi, right? Let's say we know how computers basically work. We know the companies that are involved in the videos. One of them. Look at the stock trades. What are they doing behind the scenes? We don't know. You know what I mean? So we can only guess. We can thank Obama for the Stock Trade Act, and that basically that started the groundwork for what the American Anti-Corruption Act would be. Recently, I posted a video when Obama had signed that Stock Act, and it shows he professes right there. You know, I always say this a lot. I reference that movie Lincoln's really well done. In order to bring the people together, we have to take incremental steps, and that's just with anything in an organization, a job. If there's change, and just do that, right? Then there's progress traps, right? If we take that too far. But anyway, so the American Anti-Corruption Act also has items in there that, such as ranked choice voting, which is good. That gives us more options. I think all of us would want that in our presidential elections, right? And that's also for state level stuff too. But we can also push it to the federal. So the idea again with that is to hold them accountable to actually be working. Again, I don't know it makes sense if you were to get rid of the money in politics, that they would spend 70% of their time actually working instead of campaigning. And there's also some campaign vouchers, and really levels the field out, makes it fair. The American Capitalism Protection Act, I have been following a lot of things with Robert, I hope I'm pronouncing this last name right, Reich. He was Bill Clinton's former labor secretary. I don't subscribe to everything that's in his platform these days. He talks a lot about uncapping the House. I don't really support that. That's something else. I don't really want to get into that. But the idea of initiating and imposing CEO salary caps without hindering progress. So when Bernie Sanders went along and did that, the way he framed the title, and it's not just the way that he frames it. It's like, yeah, sure, the penalties for something like that would be to impose taxes on those that don't accord to the law if that were to become law. But just the way that he brings it there. I believe I come from the patent world. I've been doing that 15 years. So when we have these principles and due processes in the patent office, a title in an invention has to be indicative to the claims. Otherwise, you have to change the title or adjust the claims, right? You can't introduce new matter. There are lots of things. You see the Inflation Reduction Act. That doesn't do what it did. That was consumer spending was in there. You could argue, and I haven't heard it, that some of the items that were in the Inflation Reduction Act encouraged consumer spending, but not much. If it's just that social safety net stuff, still, you can't. It's just something to just shut us up and make them think that they're doing something, and just promoting that, and it just goes on and on. So American Capitalism Protection Act, again, there's some other things that are in there that I've built with that, where we could have truck driving incentives, where we could, for the industry that brings products and services to the table, to our grocery stores, to wherever it is, you know what I mean? If we can just give them, I don't know, we don't want to go in some dystopian, like robot everything or whatever. That's kind of an extreme example, but so go and check that out too. We've got the Digital Democracy Project. This is pretty cool. This is from the Breaking Ground in Florida. I discovered this on the Move On organization. I'm on their, I'm a member, I was supposed to, because I have the app. I've done some volunteering with it, and I discovered this one, I can't remember her name, Natasha maybe, or Natalie or something. I looked into it, and that's really cool. They give us a streamlined portal to the constituency. I don't really like that word constituency. It's alienated me. And maybe it's everything we've been through. People. It brings everyone, because let's say I was congressman and there was a piece of legislation that came through, and I would ask my district, unfortunately, hopefully we can get more than just 1/7 of this district to actually determine the out of 700,000 who your representative would be, right? There's 700,000 and only 138,000, something like that, determine the winner. Wow. Only half actually vote. So anyhow, so to get people, more involved, it's always been a challenge in politics, especially modern politics. So for this right here, anything that I would go against the grain, I don't see why I would, but if I did, I would explain to the people why I would do that. And there's probably some information they didn't know, right? And then again, in my situation, you can just vote me out. I'm only running for one term. I'm only going to be there one term. I've got other stuff going on. So that's really cool. Again, that it gives that it's a third party, and they have, because anyone could just go and do that. Like if you didn't have a digital democracy project and you're on Facebook and you're like, here's a piece of legislation that's going through, what do you think? And then however many people comment, they could be from anywhere. They could be a foreign adversary or not. So that's what the Digital Democracy Project would do, would bring it to the actual people, and it would validate through a voter, it'd be totally secure, and you could hold them accountable if something were to mess up and things like that. So climate change, that's probably the number one on my list. It always has, for 20 years now. But again, there's equal priorities. That doesn't mean I'm not going to negotiate for this or that, just because that's the number one thing to me or whatever. You know what I mean? So number one thing there's a lot of things on the left that are good with the carbon pricing carbon. That's an option. That's it. Recently, the EPA has new standards. That's fine. But really, it's those three levers, right? It's the money, technology, and finance, right? So I'm sorry, it's government, technology, and finance. Government has done very little, and even the things they've done, it's just every time I see it, especially from the incumbent here, it's just there's a dam, you know what I mean, and there's all these water leaks, and they're just kind of playing whack-a-mole or what have you, and just putting one finger in, and it's a big mess. So, but the number one thing that's most novel about that, to go to the financial sector, is to offset the green premium by mandating that fossil fuel assets do that. Carlyle Group, they own a lot of real estate in this area. I don't care. You know what I mean? That's what we need to do to resolve climate change. If we don't resolve that, we have nothing, right? So, let's move on to border security and immigration. This is something that a president would have to do. Like, the reason why we're having so many migrants, immigrants, whatever you want to call them, it's definitely not an invasion, not under the law. It is not an invasion. They're not coming over here with flags and arms and saying we're taking over your land. That would be an invasion. That's not what it is, okay? Legally speaking. So there's the lack of economic opportunity. That's been going on for 20, 30 years. You know what I mean? So every president's had to do with that. And again, if we're talking also about, both aisles is saying that we want to bring our resources, we want to bring jobs back. That's both sides from China. Now, to do that realistically, it kind of coincides with Gross Domestic Product Protection Act. I've been working on to 70-30. We protect our interests, whatever labor, manufacturing, anything like that. 70% of that stays here. 30% you can put wherever, right? So if you were to, in those steps that are required, if we decouple from China to 730 or anywhere, and then we can delegate that out to places like Mexico or Brazil and set up manufacturing facilities, labor, again, we're still protecting our interests too. It's not just giving. We don't have to help anybody, but if we want to do this over here in China and overseas, let's protect our continental interest, right? So, and again, like we would treat them just as workers as we would here in America. So whenever you're in there, the same constitutional things, the same reasons why they come over here to begin with illegally, right? So if we were to do that, boom, you got that all settled, and then our continent just thrives like that. Within the new world, we're still in the new world, aren't we? How old are we? So then, of course, the tech skilled, advanced technology and skilled personnel, boom, that's it right there. So military and veterans, it's very personal to me. I come from a military family. Recently, I saw something about, there's 3M, and there was this thing about there was this earpiece that was malfunctioned, and 3M was just joking, clowning how much it costs to actually make and how much they were charging the government for it. It was like $6-7 a unit when it costs like 30 cents to make, and they were malfunctioned. They ended up firing the CEO, and and all that stuff. There's other things like military and veterans when it comes to, so we want to protect veterans. We want to be able to provide. That's always been number one. If you notice, like there's no shutdown. We want to protect our military. Great. That's awesome. But what about the people too? There's other things going on. Just as we move forward through my platform. So I'm rushing here because I know these questions are about to come up in about 9 minutes. So, also, maybe there's some other things. You hear a lot of everywhere you go, it's a smaller portion, but things like things that are going on with sexual harassment or just the way that what kind of human resources protocols do we have? You know what I mean? Maybe we could even consider people that have been in trouble in the past, to reform, show a record of that. In times of war, definitely we look past. We adjust the requirements for enlistment, right? So maybe that's something we could look into. I know we're having a problem with quota. Why serve, right? And I can go into and sell you all day. I've taken the ASVAB myself, did pretty well. Technology, AI is mostly what that is about. We want to protect jobs as best we can. How do we do that? I say and at least one idea, and that I'm adaptable to hear all kinds of different ones, is where we would have IT departments, like certifications. It's nothing new in the IT world, and protect that. If we can legislate that, that's necessary before things get dystopian. Again, I say that, there's already money, lobbyists in Congress pushing policy. Again, we're protecting our interest government wise with disinformation and voting systems, and great. Yeah. But again, what about the people, their jobs? You know what I mean? This isn't a cotton gin. If we were to get rid of 20% of jobs, they become dependent on the system, then taxes have nowhere to go but up for the middle class. And it's just going to get messy. So we should do that. Pro-choice, I'm pro-choice. I put out a paper out there recently where you would look at it and you would think it's a bill. It's not. It's a paper where I mentioned heartbeat. Like where's legally when a person, what defines a person that is deceased is that their heartbeat can no longer be detected or revived, right? So that's deceased. So that'll be the same for when life begins. That doesn't mean that that's when you draw the line for abortion. Here in Virginia, we have some of the toughest state laws in the country, and we also have I wouldn't use the word liberal when it comes to, you could, but when it comes to abortion and how it's broken down in a trimester, the third trimester, there has to be some sort of access to human resources, access. And that's in my paper. And it explains it. It sets a constitutional precedent that I know there are a lot of people on the right that are okay with that. It's just those loudest voices that become partisan issues. That's both left and right. Rainbow rights, you know what I mean? I see a lot of arguments on what the Bible says about that. That's a violation of it. People there's no gauging, there's no straight gene. It's a condition. People are just wired like that, where they choose or whatever, you know what I mean? And they move on with their lives. Parents should definitely have the rights there. You shouldn't be able to just, if a kid is confused or their parents are busy at home and they can't really attend that much to whatever that kid may need, and be able to go off somewhere clandestine or illegally and get surgery done, maybe regret it later in life or not, but still parents should have that superseding authority when it comes to that, and then just work it out on yourself, whatever it is, you know what I mean? And I don't know what maybe the limits of that. Maybe it's just unhealthy to do that under the age of 10 or before the age of 12 or whatever it is. You got to work with the medical, the doctors and things like that. So gun violence, again, that's something that's a socioeconomic problem. People are going to be more susceptible to commit gun violence when socioeconomics are down. Even FDR knew that. If you've ever been here in DC or looked at any of the quotes, you can see just what FDR was promoting about how demoralization and when you're deprived of socioeconomics, what happens. So that would do that. Healthcare and education, the ACA, the American Healthcare Act, ACA, it's the ACA. Anyway, so what we want to do there, the problem with that act is that it benefits the insurance companies, right? So what we want to do is get a panel of physicians and have them figure out how is this going to benefit patients? How do we get the costs for the more expensive ailments out there down and make that more appropriate? Again, I'm open to more ideas. It's to get it more efficient. We spend the most money on healthcare. It doesn't work for everybody. I'm relatively healthy, so it doesn't affect me, but I see the numbers. I see the complaints. I see how much we spend on it. So education, we're going to keep the Department of Education. Why would you want to get rid of it? Why do you have a problem with the Department of Education? I don't think, if anything, the biggest complaint you might hear from the right is, I'm pushing sexuality and transgender, and that might be just a small. I haven't been to school recently. My son is in his early 20s. We don't know what it's like right now. I hear I don't hear very much from people saying, "Oh yeah, it's a big problem." From the left, yeah, there's someone who's transgender, and they I just don't hear it. I just hear it's something manufactured, made up from the right because they have no other better ideas. Right? Look how messed up and divided they are, and that's because of Trump. All right, media literacy again. That's another thing where we can political disillusionment comes from media illiteracy. Their methodology is solid. It's really cool that an intellectual property attorney innovated that through Visual Studio, and just our whole staff and how they rate the news. And there's other things in media literacy when it comes to capital trades. I can say I'd adopt that terminology again. If this was like a patent and it relates to politics, that's where it's abuse. Then I would, excuse me, I would say capital trades, check who's out there, who's got what representatives. If you're running against an incumbent, see where their stock trading, see how their net worth. Like Don Beyer, more than doubled his net worth since being a representative. The flake, yes, okay. No war on drugs. We want to reduce the demand of drugs, right? That's a thing here. I've talked to our Commonwealth's attorney, Parissa. Her last name is evading me, but I attended a caucus once at a community center, and that's what we want to do. That's ultimately without stigma. We can also adopt some things when it comes to schools, open up the schools. There's some pilot programs just shipping off kids that are troubled to community centers. We'll see how that works. It's expensive, but foreign affairs. It's not Washingtonian creed to just get meddled in foreign affairs. World War II has changed that, our influence of it, but we can't just, you saw recently Schumer is advocating getting involved in other countries' business, you know what I mean? Just like that. That's not who we are. That's not what we do, right? And if we want to unify the superpowers and we want to resolve common goals, and that is, climate change, poverty, healthcare, every world leader wants their people to thrive, you know what I mean? Some of them may, even our own home, it just use unnecessary suffering as a means, as a strategy, blame them or something, stir it up, make it, I don't know. So that's what we want to do. And then spacefaring and, the three things looks like 2 minutes with foreign affairs, climate change, healthcare, education, and poverty. We can unify on those things. Spacefaring and commerce, this is really cool. There's a asteroid 16 Psyche, where the mission was done, launched successfully last October. There's like 10,000 quintillion, it's 19 zeros, I believe, of money out there. So not only can we learn more about space and our own star and our own planet, we can also make a lot of money in the process. So there's, again, just those incremental phases. We can set up tourism, video tours, and slowly tours there. And as we're getting there, machines are good. We can use them for our needs. Build infrastructure, space infrastructure from that. And with that, again, like there's so much money. Talk to economists, like what are we going to do with, all that money? You could crash the market because of the abundance of it. So, spacefaring, that's probably one of my most, favorite. That's where we unite the most, isn't it? Like we just, from all our differences and everything. Right now, there's wars going on, but yet we have International Space Station out there where there's different countries working together on stuff. How about that? So, all right. I think I'm a little early. I can go ahead and start taking questions from you, Paul, if you're ready.
Wonderful. Yes, I am here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having me. I had to call in tonight because it's...
See, look there. Jeez. Hi.
Yes.
Look at myself.
So basically, everyone tonight, we got Steve Leon, the great Steve Leon.
To spend the last 10 minutes answering those questions.
Steve, I'm here, Steve. I'm here.
I'm ahead of knocking out those 16 items, so we can just, here we go, 850. Ready when you are, Paul.
Yeah, Steve, can you hear me?
I need to stop my screen share.
Steve, can you hear me? Steve. Steve.
Oh, turn my volume up. You got me?
Yeah, can you hear me, Steve?
Yeah, I've got an external mic here, so hopefully there's not a lot of reverb.
That's okay. I can hear you, Steve. Like I was saying to the audience, it's great to be here. It really is. Steve's a great guy, good friend of ours. And honestly, like I said, the 8th district is going to be lucky to have Steve. So we got a few questions. If anyone has any more questions they want us to ask in the following weeks, please email owners@gcdnetwork.com. So we got 5 questions for Steve tonight. We want to run through them. Question number 1. Steve, what made you want to run for Congress in Virginia's 8th district?
All right. Well, I had initially ran for president. I still kind of am. I saw as early as 2022, like January 2022, and I saw Joe Biden's age. I saw all the different problems, and I figured, I mean, I've kind of been floating the idea for, the last couple of years in my journey here. And I just know that my plan is better. I knew that everywhere I go, I always adopt and bring something new to the table. If it's the firm that I'm at now, they were having a problem in their document department. And so, yeah, and I know that my plan is assembled from the collective interests, you know what I mean, through various third-party organizations and things like that. So I just know it's a solid plan. I know that I know that I'll be a better representative than Don Beyer, any of them.
Right. Absolutely. You mentioned Biden, but I'd like to mention Trump. We'll get to Biden later in the questions, but Trump. So Trump's looking like the GOP frontrunner in 24. If Trump does get in 2024, would you say that this country could survive a Trump presidency if elected in 2024?
The country can always survive. The problem with Trump is that he divides us. We saw that with COVID, where he had declared a national emergency, and then to the cameras, he said it was a hoax. So there's a lot of unnecessary suffering there. That's a part of his strategy. Frankly, I think that's his go-to strategy. Create a bunch of distraction between one another, divide us, and then so he can be the problem and the solution at the same time. It doesn't work. I know a lot of people on the right had decided to vote for Trump because he did that. So also things like climate change, he's just going to take us back. That's less greater. So I'm willing, if I get elected and he wins, I'm just going to bring my platform to him with data, metrics, third-party organizations, protests, whatever it is. So we'll still survive. There's just going to be a lot of unnecessary suffering is a part of life. We adapt to it. Government can only do so much, but with him, it's going to be far worse.
Right. Great point. And that brings us to our next question. Some people in the Democratic Party on the left, they say that this country will not survive a Trump presidency. They will not. They think that if Trump gets elected, it will be the end of this country as we know it. So that kind of leads into our next question. Where do you differentiate yourself from your party and others that share your same ideology?
Well, I call people out. When it comes to corruption, it's about the money. Here in America, maybe it's different in other countries, but here it's about the money. So I call out Don Beyer. New guy that's made my list is Ro Khanna. This guy's got hundreds of $millions. Go to his website, rokhanna.com, and he's got a little button there that says that he's campaigning on removing PAC money and lobbyist money. Click on the link, goes blank. Don Beyer, I call out people on the left, and it's not like the way that Trump did it. I mean, Trump, he would push a tyrannical agenda based on any kind of facts or data and just point fingers and blame, right? I don't do that. Right. I will call out the problem and I bring the solution.
Great answer. And I just want to specify, you make a great point. There's a reason, Steve, why lobbying is banned in South Korea, right? So you make great points. This one's more of a fun question. What is your favorite band?
That is a good question. I love all music. I've been listening to a lot of music lately just to kind of keep me positive and upbeat. I mean, geez, 80s and 90s, it was like hard rock, Pantera, and then just evolved with, I guess, whatever, new metal, Korn, added some rap in there, Wu-Tang, and then, Eminem, Linkin Park even, and just some of the stuff they had on the radio. But lately, it's my favorite band presently. I'm probably going to have to, if I could pick one, I'm probably going to say Metallica.
Metallica, absolutely. Metallica's a great band. They don't get the props they deserve in some cases. The last question is this kind of relates back to President Biden, as we spoke about him earlier. If you could tell President Biden one thing, what would you say to him?
Ask or tell?
If you could tell. Or ask, either or. If you could ask or tell, I mean, it's up to for interpretation.
I would tell Biden, if he cares about his legacy or the people at all and their collective interests, if he wants to see that Congress improve, you see where it is, the 118th, it's terrible, then he will consider my agenda very seriously with new ideas. And very well, I could want to talk about transfer of power. Who's to say that I might not be the 47th president? Because the way that it's done, again, Biden is standing there right next to Obama when he signs the Stock Act, right? And when I'm talking about the American Anti-Corruption Act, for him to have the cameras and to advocate for just that and the other things in my agenda too, when it comes to climate change and going after the not going after, but mandating these fossil fuel assets and other things, and really he could be grooming a president and helping. It's a win-win. So I would tell him. I wouldn't ask.
Wonderful. I like that. I mean, because again, Steve, I got to tell you, maybe we don't agree on every issue, but I'm going to tell you this: your issues are authentic. Your policy of authentic and original policy. A lot of people are just repeating what they hear on CNN and Fox. You actually, I can tell you did your due diligence. I can tell that you know what you're talking about. And again, I think that you could debate anyone left or right. So, it's a pleasure coming on, able to ask you these questions, Steve, and I hope to be able to do it again in the coming weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Paul.
Hey, my pleasure, Steve. Enjoy the rest of your show.
Sure. Let's see here. We've got 3 minutes. Why don't we? It's Palm Sunday. I was raised Catholic. Let's see what's just to burn a little bit of time here. Let's see what positive the world has done on Palm Sunday. Let's take a look. Let's see. The movies of Palm Sunday, Lords. Thousands of faithful attend Palm Sunday celebration in Jerusalem against them. Here's the Washington Post. So this is something right here with how media literacy can help. AP is right at the top on where they're rated. The Hill's the most, they would say nonpartisan, but I mean it gets a little gray area. Nonpartisan, bipartisan. They're the most centered. You look at how they rate and just the tone, the feel, the facts, the data that's in the Hill. It's one of my favorites. So those are my three: Washington Post, the Hill, and Wall Street Journal. Just from left to right like that. So Washington Post on a bright Palm Sunday in DC, sparkle and blossom still bloom, sparkle and Palm Sunday sunshine. My partner and I were supposed to go to the cherry blossoms and get some photos. Fortunately, she had a migraine, so she was beating herself up a little bit about that. So she's watching. It's not a big deal. We can always go next weekend. So she doesn't like talking about politics very much, but she still is involved. So anyways, so here's something. The cherry blossoms were a gift from Japan. It's just something, a thing here. Earliest memories were going to the National Shrine in DC. My grandmother, I was able to get my grandmother out of the house a couple Christmases ago to attend mass the week before Sunday. So it's nice. Next week is Easter. It's fun. It's kids. What does Easter have to do with, Jesus? And well, I don't know. It's some brainiac out there. What are Christmas trees? I don't know, like life eggs. I don't know. It's just fun, to get people together. When I was much younger, I used to be like, why is it like that? It's just corporations and capitalism. It's, what, it brings people together. Okay. And then, so there's lots of stuff here. I think there's something going on with I got a notification. There's some kind of geomagnet thing happening, which are common. But so anyways, 9 o'clock. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see everyone next weekend, and have a wonderful evening.